So Canadian hockey has been described as a meritocracy. You can describe a lot of national sports that way, where everyone is so invested in finding the very best so that all kids take part in it, and the best are moved up and up the ladder until you've tested like a big percentage of the population to find the absolute best athletes, taking them from being grade school kids all the way up to the pros. But if it is a true meritocracy, then why are 40% of the professional Canadian hockey players born within 3 months, between January and March? And then why are only 10% born in the final quarter of the year? Why is this same effect seen in soccer players? When FIFA has programs where everybody starts out and the best always get support, why is it when everything else is even, when everything is based on merit, the time of year in which you're born makes such a big impact on if you become a pro? Is it in the stars? Does the pull of Jupiter make you better at kicking a ball, while Mars being in retrograde makes you better at throwing a ball? In these sports that have such support and where there is such great public interest in finding the very best athletes, how does this discrepancy exist? The answer is cutoff dates. When there is a yearly cutoff date to determine which cohort a child will fall into, those born in the early months of that cohort are at a significant advantage to those born in the late months. They are essentially a year older. Now you think that, a year, and that's the difference between being a pro and, going and getting a normal job? Well, you have to think about what being a year older gets them. It gets them praise. It gets them extra attention from the coaches. It gets them extra coaching. It gets them opportunities to go to camps. It gets them funding. It lets them potentially travel as they move up in through the years. It gets them better competition. And year after year, these advantages compound until the distance between a good player born at the beginning of the year and a good player born at the end of the year and not given those same advantages, until that gap has grown so wide that it can't be overcome. And if you are in any doubt, this same effect has been found across multiple sports. Not just hockey, not just soccer, baseball, tennis, cricket, basketball, NASCAR, sumo wrestling, rugby, judo. When you are young, a year of development can actually make quite a bit of difference. I actually know this firsthand. So a little bit of a personal story. I was a year ahead in school. I was a year younger than everyone. And yet I was always a half a foot to a foot taller than everyone. So not only was I this big, galumphing, gangly puppy, but I was also a year less acclimated to my body. And in grade school, I was embarrassingly bad at sports. So because my opinion of my abilities, so my self-esteem, was constantly being challenged in this arena, in gym class and at recess, like every day, I said, I'm not good at sports. I saved my ego and I stopped trying. I was very easily embarrassed. I was very sincere and easy to tease, and it was just too much for me, and you don't have proper perspective as a child. And that lack of effort of putting myself out there for something that would only lead to me being embarrassed, like the negatives compounded so that I did become bad at sports. And the only sport that I played in high school was debate. Then, in my early 20s, a gym offered a discount to my workplace, and a bunch of the guys started going. None of them were athletic guys, so it wasn't like intimidating, and I decided that I would join up too. And I started lifting weights, and I really enjoyed it. And to my surprise, while I started out weak for my size, I ended up definitely not being like genetically, naturally weak like maybe I had assumed. It did not take long before I was one of the biggest guys in the gym. Then in my mid-20s, I started Muay Thai because I had a friend who started teaching Muay Thai at the Kansas City gym that had kind of produced all the UFC fighters up to that point. This was very early on. And I decided, I'd go with my friend. And I was big enough to take the punches that I was sure that my lack of athletic ability and coordination would be letting slip past my guard. But I turned out to actually be pretty good. And not just because I was 6'6", super heavyweight. So, for example, I had the ability to check a kick, any kick, effortlessly. I did not have to look at my opponent's leg. It took no thought for me to react, and I would put my knee into their shin, and pretty soon nobody at the school threw roundhouse kicks at me anymore, because getting a knee in your shin hurts a lot. And yet, I had spent my entire life avoiding sports because of this initial thought when I was a little kid that I was bad at them. And that means that I missed out on a lot. So is the point to be sad when you look back and see that you've done this to yourself? Is the point to be disappointed that you weren't born at the right time of year or with more talent? No, of course that is not the point of this video. You know this. I don't know why I'm asking these rhetorical questions. The point is that we think that we are talented and naturally gifted at something or not, but what really determines how good we get is how hard we work and how much we put ourselves out there. This is a topic that we are going to be coming back to time and again. I've already mentioned it before, but expect to revisit it in more depth. And this is the seed, though, that I'm planting. Those kids who were at the top of their sports, were they talented? Were they born talented? Were they born also lucky to be in the correct part of the year, to be the largest, strongest, fastest of their cohorts? Yeah, they were. But my argument is they excelled more because they received praise and they received support. And knowing that, you can do a hack. You can take advantage of your own psychology consciously. Now, because who is going to be there in the writing world to praise and support you? It takes getting to the point where almost everybody else has quit before you start getting any of that. But that's okay. You can push through. That is the difference between getting lucky to receive the things that you need unconsciously by being born with the right amount of talent or in the right place and time, and our ability to consciously make our own decisions. A good example of this is a video that I made not long ago about willpower depletion. So willpower depletion is when you use your willpower up and you later succumb to it. This was found in study after study. I reported that. Then I was told, hey, there's some new studies. It turns out that once you are conscious of willpower depletion, that if you are told it is definitely a thing, that it actually becomes even more of a thing. And if you are told willpower is actually infinite, that you can behave almost as if your willpower is infinite. And once you know this, you can put a cue between feeling something and reacting to it. The praise and support that those young athletes got is what pushed them through the discomfort that it took to become great. So great that they were able to become professionals at something that a lot of people want to be professionals at, and very few can. As humans, we prefer to avoid discomfort unless there's a really good reason for going through it. If a person is being ignored or worse yet, mocked, their line of thinking isn't going to be, this thing that I'm clearly bad at, I'm going to make this situation even more unpleasant by pushing into it more deeply and getting even less comfortable. But you don't have to go with your natural gut reaction. Once you are aware of the true process, you can push towards the benefit without having the positive feedback. Look at a bodybuilder's diet. A bodybuilder's diet is a really good, concrete example of this. They don't feel hungry to eat their 7th meal of the day. A bodybuilder can't wait until they get the cue of hunger to eat the meal that they need to eat. They won't make the gains that they need to make. They have to eat without a prompt because it gets them where they want to go. They have to do what they need to do without positive feedback, even with some negative feedback and discomfort, to achieve their goals. So you don't wait for someone to pat you on the back and motivate you to put in the hours at the keyboard. You don't wait for the accolades. You don't wait for inspiration. You put in the work without the prompt, without the positive feedback, without the instant rewards, and you get the same results as someone who was praised and supported. It was harder to get there, but you know what? Then you can be proud of that. Hell, do it to spite them. This is the difference between us and the animals. We can feel something, and before we react to it, we can stop and think. We can insert our intention. We can do the logical thing and the hard thing. There's something weird in human psychology where we really, really love the myth of talent. This has been proven in studies, even by people who say that they love the person who worked hard to get where they are. When they read the entrance story of a musician who was a natural talent, gifted to be able to play the violin at 3 years old and has won tons of awards, and then they read the application of someone who worked really hard, didn't receive accolades, but has gotten here due to grit and willpower. It's horrible to say, but they will say that the music produced by the talented person, the genius is what they're told, is better. And it's the same person. So we love the idea of the naturally talented person, of the natural genius, but in my opinion, it's more of a myth than anything. Take a writing class. The difference in ability between a talented beginner and an average beginner is nothing compared to the difference between either of them and the person who has put in decades, who's put in the tens of thousands of hours at the keyboard working on improving their writing. I truly believe that talent is worth much more for the praise and support and encouragement that it gets you to allow you to push through discomfort than it is for any slight difference in quality that it makes for. And lucky us, we can give ourselves those things. We can decide that we will be the person who writes hard for 10 years and 10,000 hours, pushing at our weaknesses, developing our strengths, getting uncomfortable until we are the people who make the things that make other people doubt themselves. And what's especially lucky for us as writers is that, unlike an Olympic athlete, it doesn't have to be our parents who recognize this in us at age 5, who recognize our capacity, which honestly nobody can recognize. But the good thing is that writing fiction is an old person's game. Life experience on its own will make you a better writer. So it's never too late to get serious about your writing, to push yourself at it. Don't ever think that your chance to be a great writer has passed. So I have one request of you. Please do not wait for the lifetime where you get reincarnated on the correct day of the year with more talent to really push yourself at achieving your goals. This is your only life. This is your chance. No one else cares. You have to do it for yourself. Keep writing, keep challenging yourself. So I'm going to put a link to the meta study, the review of multiple studies that look into the birth month of different athletes and how that impacts their chances. I first read about this though in Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and I will also, I'll put a link to both of those things in the description. Once again, I'm Jalen Riker, reminding you to write, read, and live.